or the Liberian Student Association, that would then give birth to the Liberian Community Association of New York, that in turn would give birth to the Union of Liberian Associations in the United States. In many ways, it's responsible for what is happening in Liberia today. For in Liberia today, we have a vibrant democratic process underway. There are exciting elections for the Senate ongoing in our country. A very exciting race in Montserrat County, something we haven't seen, many of us haven't seen in our lifetime. And in many ways, what is happening there was triggered by men, Mr. Harvey, G. Bikers Matthews, who came from here, went home, and challenged an entrenched system of narrow, insular political elite, and sparked the change that we've seen over the years that have literally brought us to this day when all of us can witness firsthand what we can fairly say free, fair, open elections in Liberia. So a big thank you and a big cheer. A big round of applause to you, of the Liberian Community Association here in New York, Mr. Harvey, and to others of his generation. Again, a big round of applause. About a month ago, I spoke to your compatriots, the Bassa Association of Columbus, Ohio. I focused on the theme, why we are poor, what can we do about it? In my address, I concluded that we are poor in many ways because over the years, since our founding, we've been ruled by an insular, like the young fellow who introduced Mr. Dixon said, quoted from my speech, we're ruled by an insular, inward-looking, narrow political elite whose members have changed over time, but that by virtue of our political structure have had no incentives to provide public service to serve their constituents. And so I propose a series of political reforms calling for devolution of power to the counties, election of our superintendents, election of city mayors, election of town chiefs and district commissioners. The central point being that if those people are elected, they are more accountable to their constituents. There are more incentive for them to produce or they get kicked out. I also propose that we put in place term limits, reduce the terms of some of our elected leaders, 9-year Senate term, that's a lifetime, 6-year presidential term, too long, 6 years term for members of the House, too long. I propose we reduce those terms. I also propose that we put in place ballot initiatives, recall of elected officials. The central focus of those ideas being that if we can make political leaders more accountable to the people who elect them, then we can incentivize them to perform. Because if they do not perform and deliver, they can be kicked out of office. Today, I want to focus more on the economic prong. What we can do in the realm of economics. What we can do in terms of reforming our economic institutions. What kind of initiatives we can put forward to generate the wealth we so desperately need to live our country out of poverty. It is a difficult question. If it were easy to answer, many countries in the world would be developed today. But I tell you that there are some countries that have made a transition from poverty to middle income, and even upper middle income country. And some of them developed countries in many ways. Some of them are in Asia, a few of them are in Africa. And you'll be surprised, Botswana, Mauritius, Cape Verde, African countries that have made the transition from poverty, deep biting poverty, to middle income country. All of these countries follow different development paths. They have their own unique strategies, but they have certain commonalities that we can learn from. As poor as those countries were, they realized that they had two key resources: the people and the land. And invariably, they invested in the people, in terms of education, and in the land, in terms of developing export-oriented agriculture. They then used the agricultural surplus in the form of taxes paid to government for reinvestment in education, into building infrastructure. And then they moved to the third year of the development plan, investing in low-cost, labor-intensive manufacturing for export to generate wealth, and then to higher level of industrial growth and development. What do we learn from this experience? You see, I'm a lawyer, and what my craft teaches me is when I face a legal case, my first task is to find what's the legal issue. I immerse myself in the facts, find what's the issue that needs to be resolved, and then once I find that issue, I look at how courts have resolved similar issues in the past, and then apply the law to the facts. If you think about it, much of our lives is like that. Every day we face problems, and to solve it we sit there and think, what is it that I have to solve? And once we find the issue, we then look back at our prior experiences or other people's experiences and how they resolve a similar problem, and we learn from that. And today that's what I want us to do in many ways. And then we face this threshold question. How do we tackle the education problem we face in our country? Because that's a threshold issue to creating wealth, developing an educated citizenry. It seems difficult nowadays to find an answer to the question, particularly when you hear that out of 25,000 students that took the University of Liberian entrance, no one passed. And when you hear recently, was it 15,000, 13,000, only 15 or so passed? How can that be? Is that the country we know? What can we do to change it? Well, I've looked back at my own education history, and I think you've done so. So let me do so tonight and invite you to do the same. The first school I went to was a school called Gas School. You remember the school? It was a big frame house in Boozy Quarter. I think I spent 2 months there. And then my family moved behind the city hall. And I went to this school. It was a preschool, taken back now. But I tell you, it was literally under the plum tree, the mango tree. The one lady who taught us, the little old lady, she will be teaching us, and I tell you, somebody will be braiding her hair. And on the side, she will have a little pot on the fire. It could be a sour leaf or palm butter. But we sat there, and we carry our chairs on our head. They were little small rattan chairs. We carried the chair with us, and we sat there under the plum tree, the mango tree. And that lady drilled us in that infant reader. She drilled us in an infant reader. Somebody braiding her hair. I don't know what happened when it rained. Yeah, maybe we didn't have school, but it was under the mango tree. Most of us left that infant reader, that little preschool, being able to read some. And then I moved up the road to another school in Plunker. Again, it was outside. It was one teacher, Teacher George. It ran from the 1st to the 3rd grade. Later on, we went into the building owned by the Sunday Mannies. Howard Sunday Manning, Musu, Sunday Manning. And there where we had school. One teacher, Teacher George, he was a Ghanaian fellow, but he grilled us. I remember going home one day and, we shouting, Earth, Pluto, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter. I think we didn't say Saturn, I think we said second Uranus, Neptune, And my sisters were tickled, and they would call us to say that thing again and again. Earth, Pluto, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, second Uranus, Neptune. But we were learning the planets. And he was drilling us. By the time I left that school in 3rd grade, my colleagues and I tell you, we were proficient readers. And then I went to GW Gibson, up the road. There was an elementary school there. Mr. Stewart was the principal. Mr. Munga was there. Mr. Kalon, all Liberians. Most of them had kind of brought and done their masters. I did the 4th grade in that school. Mrs. Brown was my teacher. Wonderful education we had. And then my mother moved up to Kantan. And I moved up with my mother to Kantan. And I went to the school, if I tell you the name, it was called St. Johnny Yeli. And And you know the school? You know, Say is the firstborn son in the Mano tribe. And so this man name was Say and Johnny Yedin, and he had the school. It was an unfinished building. You know, the mud brick, not the Firestone mud brick, but a real Liberian mud brick, you know, unfinished. There were no windows. Where the windows supposed to be, there was sheeting, plastic sheeting. And when it rained, we huddled in the middle to escape the draft, our classrooms. But in that little school, they drill us. We diagram sentences. We conjugated our verbs. We dissect the frogs. You know, I remember the other day, there was some time ago, this big story about Benghazi. You know, when I left first, knew about this city called Benghazi. I'd say Johnny in the school, 7th grade, 1st grade, our teacher, George King, fresh out of KRTTR. He comes to school. Paquis, major cities of the world. And he got these cities, tell me where Benghazi is. Everybody's scratching their head. But at the end, we knew, he taught us, Libya. But the point is, that little school, Martha Sua, Lawrence Zaulu, you know, John Willie, Abraham Kroma, the guys who went to school, me, we all grew up by Liberian standard to be relatively successful people from that little school in Ganta. And the teachers, our principal was Leslie Kelly, fresh out of CWA, and all he had a high school education. You know, then we had Moses Tumpo. I think in those days he had the equivalent of an 8th grade education. Then there was George King out of KRTTR. The one where we had 2 college graduates. One was Kevin Moriarty from Brooklyn, New York. He was a college student. And then Mrs. Boyu, Dr. Boyu's wife. But that little school in Ganta, you know, produced us in many ways. The way I wrote from that school when I was in the 8th grade hasn't changed much. It has improved some, but the basic writing skills I developed there remains with me. Say Johnny in the school, an unfinished building. Most of the teachers, high school students, but capable people. Then I came down and went to Tupper High, and a new world opened for me. New horizon. I met people from all over, but I was learning. You know, that's where you went, Mr. Kessley. And then later on, I went to San Nicola Central High. You know, my mom was a missionary, and she was moving all over the place. And then I didn't remember you there, but I remember Arlington Doki. Let's Doki back in 1975. San Nicola Central High. The alligators. Again, not a very, what was the building like? Arlington, nothing to talk about. Just someplace to go, to listen, to learn. But again, we were drilled and we learned. You know? And then I went to LU, where I met Ms. Witherspoon there, economics. And again, it opened a new world for me. And then I went to law school in Liberia. So you see, the first time I came to the United States was in 1984. I came on a grant by the State Department to cover the Monday Reagan election as a young journalist. And there were journalists from 50 other countries in the world. And there's this, you know, I was 24 from Africa, Liberia. And I began to ask questions. And people began to ask me, where you went to school? And I tell you something, I was so proud to say Liberia. Because up until then, I have been to school all my days in Liberia. Never left. Only but for the war when I came here and to compete, because I wanted to practice law. And so I went to George Washington University Law School to get a doctor of jurisprudence. But before then, all my days, from kindergarten, infant reader, whatever you call it, until I finished law school, it was in life. And I bet each of you here had a similar story. I bet each of you here went to a little school like I went to, sitting under the plum tree, but with somebody teaching you something. And that made you who you are today. That allowed you to come to this country, compete and succeed. And so what lessons do we draw? How can we remake our school system? How can we make it so that 30,000 students, 25 are not failing the University of Liberia entrance? We've done it before. Our school system produced us, so we can do it again. But I propose that we begin to put the emphasis on preschool to 6th grade. Preschool to 6th grade, particularly preschool as an onset. Because studies have shown again and again that when you expose kids early to intellectual environment, to learning, you develop their cognitive skills, their language skills that will serve them long into the future. So have a mobile learning centers. Vans equipped with computers and learning material with teachers that can drive into the rural areas on market days. If you go into one time, twice a week or once a week, but to get kids when they're 3 years old, and 4 years old, and 5 years old, and expose them to learning materials. How about be building early learning centers to do the same thing, expose our young children to a rich environment of learning and stimulating their minds. People are going to say, how much it's going to cost? Don't tell me how much it's going to cost. We did it before, and we can do it again. Some of us did it under that little plum tree. Even if a van costs $20,000 or $25,000, 100 van, you're talking about $2 million to $2.5 million. That's peanuts. If we want to do it, there is the political will to invest in our children, in mobile learning centers that can reach into the deepest villages, to expose our young children to learning. We can do it. And then let us move on from there and then focus on 1st to 3rd grade. I think, again, the studies have shown that if you can read by the time you leave 3rd grade, you are going to be a successful student. If you're unable to read proficiently when you leave 3rd grade, you are going to have difficulty learning. So why don't we invest in that? Maybe we should have a standardized test when kids leave the 3rd grade. If you don't pass it, we do remedial work for you. And let's also reinstitute, I believe, our 6th grade national exam. I think almost everybody here of a certain age remember taking that. The idea here, my friends, the idea here is that by the time our student leaves 6th grade, they must be prepared, they must be ready to succeed in junior high school, and ready for college. And we can do it with small investment in early learning and elementary education. And I think we should also begin looking to spot our smart kids. The ones with the aptitude, particularly in the hard sciences and math, and establish learning academies for them, where they can go and reach their full potential. High school, it can't be more rigorous than it is. But if we can invest in elementary, junior high school will take care of itself, and so too with college. And as far as the university is concerned, we got 30,000 students taking the university entrance. What if we begin to look at creating a University of Liberia system, where you have 3-4 university campuses around the country? We can still have our flagship campus in Monrovia, but we have 3-4 around the country, each specializing in a specific area. Mining, maybe in Nimba, agriculture, maybe in Bong, forestry, maybe in Grand Gita or whatever. But spread the university out. And another thing we should consider doing, my friend, is to invest in research. Research for the pure purpose of learning, but research for the purpose of improving our lives. Start with a budget. Again, once you begin to talk this, people say, where would the money come from? Start with a budget of $1 million if that's all you got. Start with a budget of $5 million. But research. How do we improve our housing? How do we improve the mud bricks we use to build homes? How can we make roofing materials home? Invest in research in the university. Start small, but invest in research. That's what happened here. That had people, expand their horizon. New avenues open, new vistas of opportunity open by basic research. And if we begin to do these things, small steps, we go a long way to reforming our education system, to producing educated librarians who can work and generate wealth. And I tell you, as much as we think things were good, because some of us went to school back in our days, they were not good for everybody. Not many people had the opportunity even to go to schools under the plum tree. And so our goal should be now to make it available for everybody across our country. Free and compulsory should truly be free and compulsory education in Liberia. And finally, let us not forget this. We still have a large segment of our population that is illiterate. So as much as we're investing in the young people, let us invest in our older people. Let us launch a massive literacy program, turn Solihuan, Slipway, Newtown, Claratown into open-air learning centers. Have each one teach one. Make education, literacy, the hip thing, the in thing to do. Use the radio, use the telephone. Use every tools you have to reach our older people and help them get literate. I don't know if any of you played football when you were young. I did. And you know, there was always a team meetings, whether it was in West Point, where I used to go with my bigger brother, he was a better player, you know, or whether it was in the Saytown. You know, on the eve of a soccer game was normally Sundays or Saturdays, there would be a little team meeting in the neighborhood. And the parents would come. And you know, there would be the sponsor of the team, you know, the guy who would put up the little $15 to charter the bus, and everybody would throw in the little 25 cents or 30 cents. But there was a community spirit. And you would sing that song, you know, Yam Yam say, I'm only go. And you know, and everybody but we can tap that kind of community feeling, you know, to reach our elderly people with literacy program. I was in Monrovia the other day, and they have a school in Raritan Market, which is a good thing. You know, I think Market Women, the school's upstairs, you know, Raritan Market. But what if we had a literacy program in the schools too, for the women before or after they sell their produce? So let's set a goal. Can we achieve 50% literacy rate in 5 years? If we achieve that, we celebrate. But other countries have done it. Let's learn how they've done it, and let's see how we can bring literacy to the masses of our people and live the standard of living in the process. But once we're done with the education thing, and it costs money, the question is, how do we make money as a country? And the countries that have achieved development status have found a way to do so. One of the ways they found to do so is agriculture. Now, you know, I go to the supermarket every day, and I see cassava, I see plantain, I see edo. We grow those things home. I see mango. We grow those things home. The income earner for people. What's happening to us? Now, true, the American market may be far away from us, but the European market is close. Brazil, I tell you, exports $1 billion worth of mangoes to the countries of the European Union every year. $1 billion worth of mangoes to the countries of the European Union every year. And Brazil is 5,000 nautical miles away from Europe. We are 4,000 nautical miles. So it's a shorter distance. Our transportation costs cheaper. So what can we do as a country? Again, people say, well, money. But there's some smart things government can do. What if we say we want to find the 5 crops that we can produce and export economically? And then what if we say we want to find the areas of our country where those crops grow best? And then government provides the range of agronomy services, the high-yielding seeds for the farmers, teaching the farmers how to package the products to meet the demands of the foreign market, teaching us simple ways of improving the yields. And then what if we say our consulate and our embassies will have agricultural fairs every year, where people can come and see Liberian produce and taste Liberian products. What if even in our own country, we begin to hold national agricultural fairs every year? Every year, each country holds an agricultural fair and gives awards to the top producers. And then every 2 years, we hold agricultural fairs. But the thing, my friend, is we've got to find ways to generate income for our country, for our farmers. We've got to make farming a business. Other countries have done it. I gave you the example of Botswana, and they've done it with cattle. Botswana is lucky. They've got diamonds. They use their diamonds wisely. If you go to Botswana, you would think you're in the United States. When Botswana gained independence in 1966, it was the poorest country in Africa. 3 miles of paved roads. I think 2 high school graduates. No college. Today, because they use their resources wisely, they have a per capita GDP of $14,000 a year. But there is a saying in Botswana that diamond money goes to development. Cattle money goes in your pocket. Cattle is the cow. That's what they specialize in. And do you know this? That Botswana is the largest exporter of beef to the countries of the European Union, of all African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries in the world. That's a fact. I'm driving along the road in Botswana, and I'm noticing this structure every 2-3 miles. It's a little structure on the edge of the road, you know, white and blue paint. I finally asked the guy who's driving, what is that? That's for cattle to drink. Free range cattle, you know, the cattle they just graze around. But the government wants to help the farmers and put, you know, drinking spots every 2-3 miles. I went to what they call their abattoir, where they slaughter the cow. Morning. First rate. Because you know they're exporting beef to Europe now, and the Europeans not going to let tainted food come in. And every time Europeans come to inspect that abattoir, and you know what? They don't even have a port. They have to package that beef, put it on refrigerator cars, put it on train, drive thousands of miles into South Africa before they can hit the port. We have a port right now. And I make that point to say, if they can do it with beef, we can do it with a range of agricultural products we have. And I give you another example to show you that this is possible. There's a country called Mauritius. Became independent in 1968. 400 per capita GDP at independence. Our famous economist who was a Nobel laureate said this country is going to fail. They got nothing. All they had was sugar cane. They could grow nothing, sandy soil. But what did the government do? They invested in sugar cane. They brought in high-yielding seeds. They taught the farmers how to grow the sugar cane better. They processed it into sugar and they began exporting. Today, Mauritius, from sugar cane, has increased her per capita GDP from $400 to $8,000 per year. Education completely free. Home ownership, I hear almost 100% from agriculture. Of course, they move up the ladder, and we'll talk about it later on into textile and apparel. But the point is, my friends, if we have a government that is willing to make the smart investment, it's not expensive investment because you already have the 2 key things you need, the land and the people. If you just wanted to make the small and smart investment in helping our farmers and finding markets for them, we can grow our economy. We can have farmers who are not subsistent farmers, who are businessmen farmers. They can begin to produce income. They can produce tax dollars for our economy that we can use to build roads, to build schools, and lift the standard of living of all of our people. The other things these other countries have managed to do is to invest in low-tech, low-cost manufacturing. And I give you again the example of Mauritius. Almost every tablecloth I hear in the United States, or almost every bed sheet in a hotel room, is made in Mauritius. And you know what that brings in for that country? I hear over $500 million annually only from the United States. They take advantage of something called AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, that allows African countries to export products here into the United States at almost duty-free price. For smart investment in textile and apparel have lifted the standard of living of the people in that country. We've got first-rate tailors in our country. If we can invest in them, provide them training in how to finish, but more importantly, find markets here in the US and other places for them. And there are other things we can do too. You know, how about beginning to manufacture rubber gloves? No, nothing big, but small scale to start. Low-tech manufacturing that can create jobs by producing export. Finally, and talking about revenue earners, I think we have a big potential in tourism. Americans, particularly American women, black American women, they travel a lot. They don't go to Liberia. And that's a big market for us. The historic link we have with America, we can exploit. Imagine visiting black churches. But first we got to do our homework home. I propose, or I think, we should decouple the Ministry of Tourism, or tourism from the Ministry of Information. Make it a standalone agency that is focused solely on tourism. And we visit the black churches in this country. Sell Liberia to them. Liberia history and unique ties we have with them. And do some investment back home. How about creating what they call Living History Farm or Living History Museum? You know, the settlement upriver where the settlers first settled when they came. How about refurbishing some of those homes and showing how the settlers lived when they came, what they wore, what they ate, how they worship, and use them as attraction for tourists here to visit. But also our traditional villages, how we make farina, how we make palm wine. You tell me about it. And attract and then do some advertising here. You know, late at night, we always think advertising expensive, but it's very cheap late at night when when they're selling all of those cheap products. And sell Liberia. Some people say, oh, but Ebola, will the people come? We would beat Ebola. We would defeat Ebola, there's no doubt in the fact. And we can brand ourselves. We can brand ourselves as the can-do country, as the comeback kid. So, ladies and gentlemen, we face enormous problems as a country. But they're not problems we cannot overcome. And all I ask you to do is to put yourselves in the shoes of the people who founded our country. If you think we have it tough, just imagine what they had to go through. To face down the British and the French on the one hand, building a new nation from scratch. And I'm talking about those who came from here and those who they met there. The enormity of creating a new nation from scratch. That's what they did. They answered the call of their generation. They bequeathed to us a nation we can call home. The question is, can we answer the call of our generation? Can we take what they gave us and turn it into something better for ourselves and our posterity? I dare say the answer is yes. But we have to will ourselves to the task. And so here today, amongst you, members of the Liberian community of New York, this storied chapter of Eula, where history was born in many respects, let us pledge ourselves again to the task of making Liberia what it ought to be. That little shining outpost of what is possible in Africa. Let us give our all to it. And as we do so, let us remember that we're doing more than just helping to make our country better. We're helping Liberia to reclaim its rightful role among the family of nations. As that country, that little shining country in Africa, that stood for much more than just a country. We are an idea, a place, more than a place. We stand for an idea that it is possible for people to achieve something out of nothing, just like our forefathers built that country out of nothing. And as we do so, like I always like to close, let us remember that we're giving meaning to the words of Edwin Barclay when he said, when freedom raised her glowing form amongst the riders' verdant hill, she cast within the gloom of night the star of liberty. Liberia, the lone star forever.